Welcome to Esoteric Essay, revealing humanity's biggest secrets, one essay at a time. Seek and ye shall find.
Hi everybody, you read that title correctly. I'm going to explain to you how the Grand Canyon, the meteor crater, and many other things in this country are really remnants of ancient wars from the old world, Atlan or Atlantis. First I need to introduce myself. My name is James, and I'm the author of a series of essays that I posted in my private group on Facebook called Esoteric Essays. So I highly encourage all of you guys to join that group. I'll put a little QR code like right here somewhere, so you guys could just scan that with your phone. And that'll take you to the group in Facebook, and all you do is ask to join. Takes me a little while sometimes, but I'll group everybody. And all my essays can be found there in the featured section of the group. That's right under where you post. If you want to post in the group, right under there, they're all right there. You scroll from left to right, and you see all the essays and side notes. So I highly encourage all of you guys to stick around to the end of this video. This one is sort of, I love this topic. It sounds completely crazy, totally untrue, totally unbelievable, until you really start investigating what these things are, what's around, and how, comparing their official story to what you see, I mean, nothing makes sense then. I mean, I remember when I was a little kid, the first time I went to the Grand Canyon with my dad. I was like around 11 years old or something. It was like our only camping trip. And we walked up to this place. And you can't see it from anywhere. You actually have to park, get out of your car, and go walk a ways before you see this. And when this thing starts to appear in the distance, the Grand Canyon, you're just in awe. If you've been there, you know what I'm talking about. You can't explain it. You can't show it in pictures. I mean, there's some beautiful pictures of this place, but it does not describe what it really is accurately. You have to really see this. So if you've never been to the Grand Canyon, you should go just to see this spectacle in person, because your brain will go, I can't believe what I'm seeing. But so I first saw this place, like I said, like at 11, and nothing ever made sense. I'm like, this don't make sense, but they tell us. And I mean, I thought about this thing my whole life, and it just happens to go along with everything that I've been writing about, with all these ancient cities and secret places that they don't want you to know about. I mean, first of all, before we get to the essay, I would like to ask everybody to like, subscribe, and share this channel and group, and also come over to the group on Facebook and join that group. Okay, now we're going to jump straight into this essay, because this could take a little while. I'm going to add a lot more to this. Esoteric Essay number 5. The Grand Canyon and Meteor Crater, Arizona, exposed. Remnants of ancient wars in the old world, Atlan/Atlantis, and the Mahabharata. There's a series of numbers in here. This goes along with essay number 13. So, as I have said in the beginning paragraph of my previous essays, all of this comes from my personal explorations and experiences, my readings of many esoteric writings and ancient manuscripts and tablets that are currently held in small private libraries or in some of the larger secret societies. Almost all of what I will try to explain and write about is available to you as the public, right now, if you take the time to track it down and read it. My access to the esoteric and arcane just made connecting all the dots much easier. Now here is to hoping I can help all of you connect these dots as well while I try to explain some of the things that I have learned. There are old world remnants of major catastrophes, scars from ancient wars, that have been turned into tourist traps or national parks, or hidden by other means. And these sites are all over the planet. not just our country, all over the planet. These also include Native American sacred lands, among others. Some of these lands are actually owned by secret societies, its members, and they use corporations to buy up large amounts of land as a way to hold on to it and protect it, but more on that later. Let's start with the Grand Canyon. If you just go here and look at this thing in person, the story we are told really makes no sense. Nope, none. I'm telling you, I mean, if you've been there, you know what I'm sort of talking about. This cavern is massive. This is gigantic. It is almost 20 miles wide. It is 277 miles long and a mile deep. Now just think about this, 277 miles long. I mean, that is the distance from Las Vegas to basically Los Angeles. And that's how long this cavern is. When you first see this in person, it is a pretty shocking sight to see. Yep, I already told you I was in awe. Once you get over the awe and wonder of the entire experience, you might notice or even get a glimpse of this thin blue line winding and wiggling down the center of the canyon. This little blue wiggly line is actually the Colorado River. This is the culprit that created this huge, giant gash in the desert floor. Now I need you to stop here and compare the Colorado River to some of the really large rivers of the world. We have the Mississippi, the Nile, the rivers of the Amazon. These make the Colorado River look like a spring by comparison. None of these rivers have created a huge, giant canyon system like the Grand Canyon. None of them. Not even a hint of one. And some of these rivers run through much softer ground than what is found in Arizona. Just look at the so-called Isis Temple in the Grand Canyon. That's the one it's sort of like, if you look at it from above, straight down, it almost looks like a star with like 6 or 8 sides or points, and it curves in on itself in perfect circles, and it's like perfect. It's like a perfect fractal design. And they say this was created by water flowing. I mean, I'll try to put a picture of this so you can see this. This is impossible. The water could never create this structure, ever. No matter how many times you try to recreate this, it would never happen. So, just look at the Isis Temple in the Grand Canyon. This could not have been created by water erosion. This is almost perfect on all sides. Water cannot do this. This little pathetic river could never have created this gash/canyon. There's a little story that I have when I went to the Grand Canyon the last time. And I went into like the little visitor center, and they got this giant map that overshows everything, and they got like the park rangers that work inside there. And there's lots of people in there. But this was during the COVID pandemic, but there was still a lot of people in here. And I walk in there and I'm looking at stuff, and I'm looking at the map, and I'm listening to this nonsense this park rangers spewing to these people. And then I said, hey, I got a question. He's like, what's that? I said, you see that Isis little temple right there? He's like, yeah. I said, how did the water create that? And he just looks at me. I said, I would like to know how a flowing water river that's coming like this way hit that thing and created that structure on all the sides, completely perfect and like symmetrical all the way around. That's absolutely impossible. Why are you telling people the river created that? And he's just looking at me all scared like a deer with the headlights shining at him at night. He didn't know what to say. I kept going on and on. Then I started bringing up the underground cities and stuff, and then they were just shut me down. They were like, sir, you need to leave. You were disrupting the public in like the flow of the, what do you call it? They said I was disrupting everybody, and I had to shut up and leave, so I just left. And then they followed me around wherever I went for the rest of the day around the canyon and to all the gift shops and shit as I took pictures. I'm sorry I cursed. But So, I mean, I actually went there and sort of terrorized the park ranger a little bit, asking him questions that he just could not or would not answer about this ISIS temple formation and how it was really created or not created by water. So, I said, okay, back to the essay. What the hell are we really looking at here? What really caused this? I say this canyon might really be a scar from an ancient war. I say this canyon might actually be the physical remnants and proof of these ancient wars and weapons spoken of in all the old legends, esoteric writings about Aztlan Atlantis, and in all the ancient Sumerian writings. These stories are also talked about in most of your holy books from most religions, but some of these have been highly edited over the years and things have been removed from most of these writings. One text available to everyone today is the Mahabharata. This used to be considered an esoteric text to people in the West. This book actually talks about a lot of this lost technology. It's all mixed up in a weird mythology that turned the original bearers of some of these technologies into gods that are still worshipped to this day by some of these religions. The Mahabharata speaks of giant floating city/airships that once circled the planet. They speak of these larger ships alongside of some smaller ones that were once called Vimanas. These are like the UFOs that I talk about in essay number 4 that they found at Area 51 underground in one of these lost cities. I claim that these larger airships were more like our modern-day aircraft carriers, while the Vimanas were more akin to our modern-day jet fighters. The kicker is that these ancient machines were not ships that floated across the seas. These were huge, advanced aircraft. The Mahabharata not only speaks of these ancient aircraft, they also go into great detail about other lost high technologies. This book also has secrets of the Large Hadron Collider and the nuclear bomb. In fact, the father of the nuclear bomb actually quoted the Mahabharata immediately after the first successful test of his nuclear bomb. Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. That was Dr. Robert Oppenheimer. And he quoted the Mahabharata because, I mean, he studied all these ancient texts too, so, I mean, he learned a lot of these secrets from these things, and he was sort of linking it to you right there when he quoted it. This ancient text is full of descriptions of both weapons and machines. A few names used for these weapons were Brahmastra. Man, I'm really sorry in advance because these words are going to be difficult to pronounce. Brahmasharisha Astra, Narayana Astra, Brahmanda Astra, Bhargava Astra, and Pushapustrama. Boy, maybe I'll write these down and put them in the little screen right here so you could actually read them for yourself. Here is a verse directly taken from the Mahabharata while describing one of these ancient weapons. A single projectile charged with all the power of the universe, an incandescent column of smoke and flame, as bright as 1,000 suns, rose in all its splendor, a perpendicular explosion with its billowing smoke clouds. The cloud of smoke rising after its first explosion formed into expanding round circles, like to opening of giant parasols. It was an unknown weapon, an iron thunderbolt, a gigantic messenger of death, which reduced to ashes the entire race of the Varishnas and the Anakan, whatever, I'm messing up, and Cananas. The corpses were so burned as to be unrecognizable. The hair and nails fell out. Pottery broke without apparent cause, and the birds turned white. After a few hours, all the foodstuffs were infected. To escape from this fire, the soldiers threw themselves in streams to wash themselves and their equipment. That's from the Mahabharata. That's explaining one of their weapons in the aftermath. It says, this passage / verse is clearly describing a nuclear weapon / bomb and its fallout / aftermath. This entire text is full of descriptions of ancient weapons, machines, medicines, and technologies. To this very day, we are still rediscovering some of the lost technologies spoken of in this text. I would like to suggest that some of these ancient weapons described in this text actually caused horrible damage all over the planet, and some of these scars from ancient wars are still visible to this very day. And we call them the Grand Canyon and a few other things. Two such scars would be the Grand Canyon and the Meteor Crater in Arizona. There's more, and I'm probably going to talk about those in this video. There is a weapon talked about in the Mahabharata. This is like a powerful energy blast. This was said to be an utterly devastating weapon. They actually talk about many weapons like this that were fired by numerous different means, including their vimanas, the Atlantean UFOs, the same weird little crafts that they found under Area 51 in their archaeological dig that I talk about in essay number 4. This, I claim, would be the best candidate for what really caused the Grand Canyon. I will try to explain. If you zoom out and look at the Grand Canyon from a very high perspective, like a satellite view, I'll try to put one over here and over here. You might need to zoom in and out to get the right perspective. You will notice that the Grand Canyon looks just like a scar from an electrical burn. Post a picture. I have actually seen a few videos on the net, on YouTube, where a scientist has a tabletop covered with a layer of dirt and sand. There are 2 electrodes connected to one end of the table, and he is holding the other 2 in his hands. He takes the 2 electrodes he is holding and either touches them to the sand or maybe to the table, and there is then a huge electrical discharge that blasts through the sand on the table. You can see this electricity quickly blast through the sand and sort of burn and blast it, and it leaves a scar behind. And when you compare this to the Grand Canyon from the sky, the 2 look almost identical. Now, I saw this video on YouTube. It was years and years and years ago, and it used to be in my feed all the time. And I finally watched it, and I was like, wow, that's really weird. And then that's when I was like, that looks just like the Grand Canyon, those pictures from the space that I see. And then I watched this video a few times, and then I really started connecting these 2 things together and started looking into it. And it's been a couple of years now, and now I cannot find that video. I've looked through my history on YouTube. I cannot find this video anywhere. So if any of you guys have seen this video, and I know it was around maybe like 5, anywhere from 4 to 10 years ago. And it was around a lot. It was in my feed, recommended all the time. It drove me nuts. I finally watched it. If anybody has seen this video, or you know where it is, or please post a link in the comments or something, because I would really like to find this video, and I cannot find it to save my life now. Like I said, you guys are great investigators, so if you can help me with this, I need your help. So, back to Desi. This I propose to you is exactly how this canyon was really created. This weapon talked about in the Mahabharata, along with a few others, are what really created this horrible gash in the desert. And the story we are told is a lie. Total lie. There's no way this little tiny pathetic river created this canyon. And if you go there and look at it, you'll totally agree. Especially after reading or listening to something like this and looking into some of this. You're going to say, yep, this is not what they're told. And then you connect it to the underground city that's supposed to be under Grand Canyon that they're hiding and all the ruins. So I talk more about this in my dinosaur essay. I talk a lot about this underground city and stuff. This weapon talked about in the Mahabharata along with a few others, are what really created this horrible gash in the desert, and the story we are told is a lie. I claim this ancient war really did happen a long time ago. So long ago, we, as a species, have forgotten, or maybe even tricked into forgetting. I mean, see, look, little Graham Hancock book, he talks about all these lost civilizations that there's remnants of all over this country. This book does too. These are just two of hundreds of books that talk about these weird ruins in the deserts and all across this country, that we're told these weird stories about that very primitive people created this stuff, and it's not true. These things are remnants of stuff thousands of years ago, and all the stories we're told about who made these things and everything are total fabrications, and it has more to do with this stuff, these long lost civilizations, this stuff that they're hiding from us. So, okay, if this is true, why would these ancient people have blasted this desert with a super powerful weapon? Thank you for asking. Here's why. I jumped ahead of myself a little bit talking about the cities. First off, this area was not always a desert. At times it was super lush and beautifully green. Other times frigidly cold, and now it is often a mix of all three. At one point in time, it was underwater. Honestly, it's hard to see why this land would have been so viciously attacked. This is because the answer lies deep underground. Ancient civilizations. That's what Area 51, if you really need to watch essay number 4 video. There is an ancient underground city below the Grand Canyon. This was actually reported on extensively in a few newspaper articles in 1910. You can find these today if you search the phrase underground city in the Grand Canyon or citadel in/under the Grand Canyon. This article names the explorer as G.E. Kincaid, the man who discovered this amazing city under the Grand Canyon full of riches and wonders. This article says this man was boating down the river in the canyon looking for mineral deposits to mine and catalog what he saw for the Smithsonian, when he looked up and saw a huge cave opening in the wall like thousands of feet up. He ended up finding his way up the canyon wall and entering the cave. He said that it was very large and went very far under the ground. He talked about numerous rooms and hallways branching off into different directions. He talks about seeing huge golden Buddha statues holding lotus flowers. They talk about other statues and golden treasures. They talk about mummies, and sometimes these are said to be giant mummies. The article gives a pretty clear and detailed account of this man and this fantastic story. The article clearly talks about this as a real story, not a joke. They go into great detail saying Mr. Kincaid is working hand in hand with the Smithsonian while excavating this site. Once the Smithsonian shipped all the artifacts back to their headquarters, the entire case was basically hushed up. All the artifacts are now gone. The Smithsonian denies ever being involved with the Grand Canyon, and even refused to admit they ever employed a G.E. Kincaid. Basically, this was erased from the record. But it did happen. It did happen. And there's a bunch of videos that talk about this. There's a couple other people that have channels all dedicated to this lost underground city in the Grand Canyon, and it's being hidden. To this very day, there are parts of the river, the Grand Canyon, and the rim of the Grand Canyon, that are absolutely forbidden to step foot on or enter. There are a few reasons for this. There are huge amounts of Native American, Aztec, Toltec, and Mayan ruins all over, in and around the entire Grand Canyon. I have heard that early white settlers purposely smashed and broke tens of thousands of Native American relics and pottery that was left lying abandoned for hundreds and thousands of years. Some dated back to before the Aztec. Now our government tries to protect these relics and ruins, so they bar anyone from entering select areas. Side note, I have been told by many people, both Native American and the early white settlers really did smash a huge amount of relics of pottery when they would stumble on ancient sites. I can attest to seeing this firsthand at Chaco Canyon and many other sites. I was also wondering why there were so much smashed pottery all over some of these sites. There are signs forbidding you. There are. If you go to Chaco Canyon or a bunch of some of these sites, there will be millions of pieces of smashed pottery. Beautifully done. I mean, you should see. I mean, I picked some of them up and looked at them, even though they tell you you're not supposed to. I mean, they're beautiful. I mean, the amazing craftsmanship and the artistry and some of this stuff that they painted on this thing. And it's just smashed and obliterated all over the place, all over the ruins. And I was like, what the hell's going on? And it is. Like some of the earlier white settlers found a bunch of this pottery in some of these ruins and just smashed it all, trying to erase any history of the Native Americans. It's pretty gross and disgusting. It says, there are signs forbidding you from taking any, and they say that the shards have been there for up to 1,200 plus years. I started talking to elders and they said the white man did this when they first found these sites. I believe the elders in this make sense. An Indian would not smash all their pottery and all their ancient relics and stuff and then disappear and leave. It makes no sense. Some areas in the canyon are highly toxic. Some areas have radioactive and highly poisonous material lying all over the ground, and just being in the area for too long can lead to extreme sickness or death. This they try to hide and cover up. And they got uranium mines that they're mining all over the rim of the Grand Canyon. A whole bunch of crazy stuff that they try to hide. And it's toxic in a lot of areas. Some areas in the canyon... Hold on. I already read that part. So these are all the reasons they have highly restricted areas of the canyon. They don't even like to admit there are places you can't go. They don't. If you go to the Grand Canyon and say, is there any place I can't go? They're like, well, huh? What do you mean? Why? Why do you want to know? And then I'm like, because I've heard of these areas that you can't go to that tie to these underground cities. And then they're like, you need to leave. And no, you can't go there. So these are the reasons they have highly restricted areas of the canyon. They don't even like to admit there are places you can't go. The underground city is not the only thing they are hiding at the Grand Canyon. It's only the biggest. Not only do we have the newspaper article about this underground city, but we have all the Native American legends and stories and creation myths about emerging from a hole in the ground in a huge, great red canyon. We also have the Aztec legend and oral teachings about once living in a huge underground city system that contained 7 large cities, all connected via underground system. This is the legend of Aztlan. The Aztec writings, we do have talk of these 7 cities being destroyed and them having to quickly leave and travel thousands of miles south until they reached Mexico. The Native American and the Aztec all once lived in these cities until there was a disaster and had to flee. This is why the ancient people talked about in the Mahabharata decided to blast this area we now call the Grand Canyon. They were at war with the people that were living deep underground in a hidden city. That's the part they're leaving out. The people from the Mahabharata were flying around in their Atlantean Vimana UFOs, and they used the super weapon against the people hiding underground, and what resulted after the dust settled is now a national park and tourist attraction that we now visit on vacations and call the Grand Canyon. Now to the giant hole in the ground, better known as the Meteor Crater National Monument in Winslow, Arizona. This I also claim to be the physical proof of ancient advanced weapons used in our deep, deep past, and also technology spoken about in the Mahabharata and other Sanskrit and esoteric writings. The United States actually has a smaller and less advanced version of the ancient weapon that created this hole out in the desert. Today this weapon is known by a few names: the God Rod, and rods from God. We have had this in our arsenal since the middle 1980s and is part of the weapon system talked about and made famous by Ronald Reagan, the Star Wars weapon system. The Star Wars weapon system not only included stolen Nikola Tesla technologies and weapons like the fabled Death Ray, it also included the God Rod technology. What on earth is a God Rod? This is really a pretty simple weapon. It is basically a giant magnetic gun circling the planet on a few of our top secret satellites. It's a rail gun in space. Basically, there is a huge metal rod in a magnetic firing chamber that is nuclear powered and pointed at the Earth. When needed, they basically use a huge blast of energy to magnetically fire this 1,000-pound metal rod directly at the Earth. This causes massive damage to anything near the impact site. It's like basically creating our own little meteor attack whenever one likes a little destruction. I claim that a technology just like this is what actually created this crater, and we still have records of this long forgotten war sitting in plain sight for all to read if they choose to do so. There are also ancient ruins less than 15 miles behind this crater that are completely covered up and not talked about by anyone. It's totally true. I'll try to somehow put a picture of the area up here for you to see. Except there's ruins. There's been schools that have gone out there and done studies, and you can see the pictures that they've drawn if you go to the schools and look through all the records. And they have all these things plotted, measured out, everything. Except there's no signs out there. There's not. It's like it doesn't exist. You can't find nothing about them. I've been to them, so I've seen them. And I've also seen some of the records that the college kids did when they actually did this for some of the universities. They said, there's no mention of these. You're not even supposed to go behind the meteor crater. It's all shut off. All the land says don't go here, but I mean, I've been to places they tell you not to go to. I mean, I just went because I'm curious. There is still a few 100-pound piece of this bullet left for all to see. The one that I say was fired at the planet thousands of years ago that caused this meteor crater. You can still see a fragment of what is left of this weapon at the meteor crater in their little museum. It's in the main museum at the crater. They call this a remnant of a meteorite, a very large one. This is not true. This is ballistic evidence of the largest bullet ever fired at our planet, and our ancestors did this to themselves. They totally did in a war. It's talked about in the Mahabharata. These are just two examples of ancient weapons being used against this long-lost and destroyed underground civilization that both the Aztec and Native American speak of, Aztlan. Now we also have a third source that talks all about this war from another culture's perspective. I suggest picking up and reading the Mahabharata if you are interested in hearing this culture's written record of this ancient war. Researched and written by James Mazzeo. So that was this essay. But there's a lot more to this, and it includes volcanoes and many other things. That's why Mount Shasta's talked about so much, and why there's so much talk about a lost underground city and all these weird ruins around Mount Shasta. But it also involves Hawaii and Easter Island. I mean, you really need to look at Easter Island. You clearly see above ground that the whole island's shaped funny. There's this weird volcanic crater and something sinking in. I mean, and you've got all these giant statues and megalithic ruins. They don't even really show you the megalithic ruins. They just show you all these weird statues that are barely sticking out of the ground. That island is part of a lost civilization, and there's a lot of stuff underground. And this all connects to Hawaii and a lot of other things that I write about later on in my essays. Well, thank you for watching and for listening to me. And hopefully I made some sense out of this for you. I told you this was a little hard to believe, but I mean, it's fascinating. And That, I mean, when you really go to these places and look at what they're telling you, their stories don't make no sense. And that's why you got to look into what this really is for yourself. That's why I would like you to just use this as a jumping off point and start looking into all this for yourself. Because there's lots of weird ruins in this country that they do not really talk about. They don't really show you proper pictures of it. They show you one little picture of this little tiny thing over here, but they don't show you all the. There's a lot of ancient ruins all over this country. Some of them are built on by cities. Some of them have been plowed over and just completely wiped off the map. Some of them are highly protected. And then when you do go to the ones that are turned into like national parks like Cahokia and other sites like this that are in the United States, Chaco Canyon and that, they're only allowing you to see a little tiny piece of it. And the rest of it is in places you can't go. It's like Chaco Canyon, there's so many places there you can't really go and see unless you break the law and do stuff you're not allowed. And then like Cahokia, there's mounds all over the places on people's land that you can't go see that are connected to Cahokia that they don't talk about. Tennessee, there's Indian mounds in Jackson. And you can see some of the biggest mounds because people learned about them and knew about them, but like, that's like a little park. But way out in the woods all around it, there's even more on people's property that they own around it, and they're protecting those. And it's like that in a lot of places in this country. They'll let you see a little bit of it, and then the rest is hidden and protected, and then you're not allowed to go there. Like behind a meteor crater. If anybody goes to the meteor crater, I advise you, there's a road, you'll see it. Like you're driving up to the meteor crater and you have to turn off this way to go up to the parking. Just keep going straight down the dirt road, like 15 miles, even though the signs say you're not allowed to go down there. And go start looking around down there and you'll start finding a bunch of really weird stuff in ancient ruins. That's the area that I'll show you on the map. Okay, I talked enough. So if you've learned anything from this, just please like, subscribe, share, comment. I'll try to answer all your questions. Again, I highly encourage you to go to the group. There are 13 essays there that talk all about Cleopatra and Oak Island and the Knights Templar and everything you think of from that. Little gray aliens really being written about in the Zohar and talked about as being living underground and a lot of weird stuff that I talk about. And the dinosaurs being the genetically modified animals from the Bible and like the Book of Enoch and the ancient texts where they talk about genetically modifying animals and humans and stuff like that. That's what the dinosaurs were. I write about that in one of my essays. And I connect those to the underground cities here in the United States, and that's why there's so many dinosaur bones in certain places on this country. But, okay, I talked way too much. Thank you again for listening. Like, share, and comment. Peace.
Wait for it, wait for it. It's coming, it's coming. The camera catches everything.
Hopefully I can put something together out of that mess.